Hello, this is Ken Ferrie with this week's Boots in the Field Report. Everyone had enough of the Arctic blast yet? Well, that's not so good for water lines and livestock waters and anything that involves freezing up that you got on thaw. It is good for the soil. Mother Nature's doing her part in resetting soil density for us. We had a great meeting with the virtual winter college. A lot of great questions from across the United States and Canada. Man, it was good to hear from so many of you guys. A couple of questions from the Winter College I'd like to address. The first one is about horizontal tillage. Will spring or fall horizontal tillage put in more of a soil density layer? The first thing we need to clarify is that anytime we do horizontal tillage, we will put in a density change because that's what the tools are designed to do. But in my book, density layers are different than compaction layers. Compaction layers are the result of doing horizontal tillage in wet conditions, especially at the depth that you're doing tillage. It doesn't make any difference if the tillage is done in the fall or the spring. If it's wet, you'll put in a compaction layer. Horizontal tillage done in dry conditions will put in a density change, and it may turn your first and your second set of crown roots, but the third set will usually muscle its way through it, unlike compaction that tends to stop the third set of crown roots from getting through. How big the density change is depends on whether the horizontal pass is a standalone pass or whether the horizontal pass is being used to finish fall tillage, let's say like a chisel plow or disc ripper, and get it ready for planting. Horizontal tillage on top of fall tillage doesn't create near as big of a density change as a single pass run on bean stubble. And again, assuming that you aren't doing it too wet. If you have done fall tillage in dry conditions and you can level it in the fall in dry conditions, it would be less of a problem than leveling it in the spring if it's too wet. You know, in the spring you have the calendar and the neighbors pushing you to keep you on target planting-wise, pushing your schedule. And these can lead to bad decisions when you're worried about the neighbors and the calendar and you're running your horizontal pass in wet conditions in the spring. So if you do fall tillage, try to keep it level as possible behind the machine. Your goal is to have less than a 3-inch peak and valley in the spring after freezing and thawing. If you can't get that accomplished, I'd recommend leveling in the fall. Or if you feel you're always running too wet in the spring and the fall is drier, I'd level in the fall. Based on the questions and the feedback from Winter College, there must have been a lot of growers who had some bad experiences with cereal rye as a cover last year, especially ahead of corn. The question was, is it the allelopathic effect of cereal rye that caused so much trouble last year? Well, the answer is maybe. Rye problem, though, is kind of threefold. The first is water. Cover crops can be used at pulling excess water out of the soil so we can get it ready to plant, especially in those wet years. But when the water is in tight supply, if the covers grow too long and pull the water out of the soil, leaving your cash crop short, it can be a problem. Rye cover must be decomposed after it's terminated. And the bigger it gets, the bigger the carbon penalty. The carbon penalty that locks up both corn and soybeans. Cereal rye does have an allelopathic effect on corn and can cause stunting of the root system. Now, this toxin is water soluble and it'll be flushed when it rains. But in dry years like 2023, the toxin continued to build without any flushing of the toilet, and it not only stopped corn growth, but it set it behind in maturity. Now, soybeans aren't bothered by this toxin, but they are affected by the carbon penalty and, of course, dry soil, if it gets too dry, from the covers. Now, we can manage some of the carbon penalty with planter fertility, but we can't manage dry weather and the allelopathic issues without irrigation or some way to come up with timely rains. One question that came in from the meeting at Trainer Fertilizer this week on CI scores and the money paid out. The question was, will there be a payment limit by operation like there is for CSP program on the CI scoring? To my understanding, no. This payment will not be coming from the government to the grower. It'll be going to the biofuel producer and the biofuel producer to the grower, meaning it shouldn't involve any of the government offices, which should be a blessing for them. I think they have enough on their plate. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.